Okay, hello. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome once again. Thank you for making time with us this morning on our webinar session. My name is Magdan Okra, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. In today's webinar, we seek to take a prospective look at the year ahead, with the aim to empower participants with the necessary insights and information that will guide us in achieving our financial goals for the year 2024 and beyond. Effectively, we would want to leave here today with an answer to the question, how can we strategically align our finances for an improved outcome? This ties in neatly to our topic for today, which is mastering your personal finances for a successful year. And for a heavy topic like this, we have to bring in the big wigs, right? So we have with us two very seasoned panelists. We have Ms. Tara Ayi. She is the senior manager corporate relations with Petra Trust. She's responsible for client success, acquisition, and retention. And she's a part of a team that caters to 4,000 corporate clients and over, as well as their staff. Hello, Sarah, and thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Magdan. Thank you very much for having me, and good morning to everyone that's joined us. We trust that you'd have an insightful session with us, so please stick and stay.
Awesome. Thank you. Also with us, we have Mr. Desmond Bredu. He's a finance professional with a proven track record of dynamic leadership and remarkable achievements within the investments management sector. He currently leads the client coverage team at Stanbic Investment Management Services with nearly a decade of experience. He's been through the ranks of it all, from analyst in the pensions team, and he currently has a team that he also manages for client coverage at the same Stanbic Investment Management Services. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Magdan, and thank you for the invitation. And it's good to see you, Sarah. And like you've mentioned, we hope that after the conversation, people would take some key insight that they can apply to their personal lives. But again, thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we look to having a very insightful and exciting conversation. But before we move on, I'd like to let the participants on the call know that we have a chat box available for you to put any questions you have. As the discussions go on, you don't have to wait all the way to the end, and our panelists will definitely address them as we move along. Awesome. So first of all, if you're on this call and you have been in Ghana for the past 18 months, I would definitely want to congratulate you for surviving what has perhaps been some of the most volatile economic times we've seen in recent times. We weathered the storm together. We've had past webinars and discussed strategies and how to pivot, how to adapt, and how to survive. And now we find ourselves on the cusp of a new year, and we are ready to take opportunities and take advantage of the times, basically, to better our financial positions. And I imagine on the 31st of December, there were some great resolutions that were made to set goals to fully take advantage of the year ahead. And today we are on the 25th of January, and there may be, testing on whether we are headed in the right direction or not. So, and this brings me to my first question to you this morning. As someone on this call who has great plans, who may have some great resolutions for the year, especially maybe made a bold proclamation to say, I want to get my finances right. I want this year to be the year that personally my finances are top notch, but I'm not sure where to start. I'm not sure what the first steps are. I'm 25 days into the new year, and if you ask me that, Charlie, are you doing well with what you said or what you really said, I won't be able to tell you. So that's one, simply to you kindly share with us what the first steps are in getting your finances right.
Thank you, Magdan, and a warm welcome to everybody again. I think I always like to begin by saying, and I posted it on my Twitter yesterday, that now X, that personal finances are personal, and that it should suit whatever you want to achieve, who you are, and what kind of plans and goals you have for yourself. And so before you master anything or before you make any improvement, it's important for me that you acknowledge your specific circumstance. And that's why I say that personal finances is personal. And sometimes we are too hard on ourselves. We look at the next person is doing this, person achieving A, B, C, D. Maybe their personal finances in a much better space than yours. And like Magda, you already alluded to, the past 2 years past 18 months have been tough. So some of these personal finances should not be your personal finances. It is your personal finances. But before I delve into the steps, I think one of the things I want to highlight is the fact that even before you master anything, you need to have the knowledge about it. And for me, I think that people should be financially literate as the bottom line, as the benchmark. What do I mean? When it comes to financial literacy in terms of your personal finances, it's about knowing first how much you make, how much you spend, and the ways you can improve. Or say, okay, how much you make, how much you spend, how much you save, and how much or what you can do to improve. I think once you get those fundamentals right in terms of your financial literacy, then you can say, okay, now I know the basics, then what can I do next? So in terms of the next steps, for me, it starts with the honest self-assessment of your current position. So what do I mean? You need to say, okay, Desmond, or let's say Mark, who or what assets do I have? Let's say I own a property somewhere. Maybe I have 10,000 cedis in my investment account. Maybe I own a land somewhere. Then I need to know, okay, who do I owe? Or what are my liabilities? Or let's say I have this mortgage that is, let's say, $10,000, for instance. Maybe my car, I got on a car loan, for instance. Or let's say how much you are owing to maybe somebody you want to borrow money from for a business, for instance. So that's where it begins from if you want to master your personal finances, having that honest self-assessment of yourself. Because I really think that if you want to improve on anything and you don't know where you are, how did you even improve in the first place? So for me, it's important that you realize the situation that you are in. And by doing this honest self-assessment, what we call, let's say, a personal balance sheet, then you'll be able to know, okay, where I can improve. Remember, I said that personal finances is personal, and those financial literacy is about how you can improve. So you need to know where you are. And like I said, you can do that by simply having an assessment of your balance sheet. That is what you own and who you owe. Then you can make an informed decision on how you can improve on your personal finances. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Desmond. So I'm getting the key takeaway for here is that you have to look at your personal life, your finances, and ask yourself, where am I today? Right. But beyond that, if I find out, okay, this is where I am today, there's also the discussion of where I would like to be. Right. So, and this goes out to you, Sarah. Assuming I'm on this call and I've decided that by December 2024, I would like to have saved 300K. I would have loved to buy maybe my first little piece of land. Right. How do I even go about setting these financial goals? And then also, how do I even prioritize them in terms of how I tackle them?
Thank you very much, Magdan. And thank you very much, Desmond, as well. I think what he said brings us to more or less like a reality check. Yes, this is very personal. It's a good exercise to do because then you are able to put yourself into the category of what your reality is, and you can move from there. Now, once you have made that very critical first step, the next thing for you to do is to actually set the goals. I'm sure when we started, we talked about the fact that we are on January 25th already, so it's quite some 25 days into the new year, and this might continue on. And people set New Year's goals or resolutions, and for that matter, some people might be looking at it and bastardizing the whole thing and saying that New Year resolutions are not important. After all, we don't keep to it. But not planning at all is actually an effort to plan to fail. And so you need to move from that step. Good thing is being able to diagnose what your problem is half the solution already. So now you've been able to see what you really are, what your worth is. And then this is where you move on to setting goals. Yes. So I like the fact that you started even with a timeline to say you want to make 300,000 Ghana cedis by 31st of December. We're going to go back to an age-old concept that we are all aware of that sometimes we overlook, which is the smart setting of goals. So the last one you did was to give a timeline to say by 31st of December 2024. It's better to do it that way than to say, I'm going to be a millionaire. That's very open. Or I want to be a millionaire. Millionaire in what? CDs, dollars, seashells, goats, cows. You have to be very specific. So the first thing is being specific. What do you want to do? So I want to be a millionaire. How many millions is enough for you? Maybe say I want to be a millionaire by 300 million Ghana cedis by 31st of December 2024. So that is a specific goal. There's something you're aiming towards. Then your goal has to be measurable. So if you're becoming a millionaire, what are the benchmarks that tell you that I am reaching that point? So that we don't wait till 31st of December and you have to look at yourself and say that, am I now a millionaire? No, you want to make 300,000. So on a quarterly, you want to be making 50 million Ghana cedis each and all that. I know the figures seem very, very high. So then you come to the A in that, which tells you achievable or attainable. You want to be a millionaire by 300 million Ghana cedi millionaire by 31st of December 2024. You want to every process be making 50 million Ghana cedis, but your salary is only 2,000 Ghana cedis. So you really need to reevaluate your goal. Is it really attainable? Yes, you should set a challenging goal. Say your salary is 2,000 Ghana cedis. Your expenses take up half of that, which is 1,000, and then you save 1,000 Ghana cedis, which tells you that being a millionaire now is not possible in a year, and so you might want to stretch that goal and look at other sources of income and other things. But what is more realistic is to say that, okay, I want to save 10,000 Ghana cedis in 2024. That seems like a realistic goal. You know that definitely you would invest in other things, so your 10,000 might be a little above, but yes, let's just hold all other things constant in terms of investment returns and all those other things. So I want to have 10,000 Ghana cedis by the end of 31st December 2024, and I should be saving 1,000 cedis towards that. That actually brings you to 12,000, but we are creating a contingency sort of in case other things happen. And then your goal has to be relevant. How relevant is it? Is it to what you want to do? So you want to do that to be able to attain some form of financial ease so that you're not hard pressed. And maybe the extra 2,000 is going to be there because actually saving 1,000 cedis consistently for a year gives you 12,000. But you want to save that 2,000 and say for emergencies, like when my car breaks down or like when I want to celebrate an anniversary or things that I do not foresee, you have something like that on for you. But you also need to look at, in terms of when you're talking about relevance, why are you doing what you're doing pretty much? So you take those things into consideration. Again, you may not just have one goal, although it's always good not to have like 10 different financial goals. Maximum, if you're doing 3 or 2, things that you can focus on, you know that maybe first quarter I'm doing this, that as you get better with consistency, you may want to add on other things. So you order your goals. So you want to be you want to have 10,000 Ghana cedis, you want to buy a new car, you want to own a plot of land at XYZ. You might order them and say, okay, out of giving them priority, maybe owning a plot of land is first, and then being able to have 10,000 Ghana cedis by the end of the year is second, and then a third goal. So you should be able to also order what you want for yourself, just like we do every day. And the good thing is we are always planning. The fact that you woke up and maybe decided to go to work, or the fact that you're sitting and even listening to this webinar is an order of priority, something that you're already doing in that step. So I would just encourage everybody else that's watching us that don't be afraid. This process may always make you think that after every new year, why do I even have to do it? But you are actually already doing it with your little daily decisions. And we just want to encourage you that in those daily decisions, you just need to be intentional and conscious about them so you can achieve the desired end result that you want. So thank you very much, Magdan.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. I really like the SMART approach because it doesn't seem like the sort of thing where you can just look at fireworks on 31st night and say, hey, next year I will make $1 million. It sounds like the sort of thing you'd have to definitely go and write it down somewhere and something you would be able to track. Thank you very much for sharing that. But to follow up to that, right, we have, as you've mentioned, I've decided that I want to use the SMART approach. That may involve me writing some of the things down. It may, like Desmond said, if I take the snapshots, it may also involve me putting some of my money away. And that makes me think of a budget, because once it becomes financial numbers being put against income and expenses, then we are heading in that direction. So Desmond, I'll definitely want to know from you, if I'm on this call, I've heard what you're saying, I also want to implement a budget starting today. first of all, what are some of the strategies I will be able to use in creating one? And then also, what are some of the ways I will be able to stick to the budget beyond just creating it? That's what
yesterday.
Awesome.
Yes, yesterday I was having a question with somebody, and they were like, "Where did my money go to?" And I was like, "You're not alone. Many of us have that situation where we sometimes wonder, maybe you are paid on 20th of each month, but 25th, you're wondering where your money went to. I mean, and many of us face that situation. And for me, the fundamental issue here is the fact that we could not, or we do not have a budget. So by having a budget, you tell your money where it should go rather than wonder where that money actually went. Because if you had planned to spend 5 cedis on food, and at the end of the day, you've recorded that, you exactly know where your money has gone to. So that's basically the import of having a budget. Again, let me come back to the initial thing and saying that personal finances is personal again. Same for your budget. Now, the budget that you, Magdan, will draw will be definitely different from what I will do. Even as an individual, the kind of budget I will draw up when I was doing my national service will be different from when I'm a contract staff. When I have full-time employment, for instance, when you are married, when you have kids. So the budgeting should be evolving with your personal circumstance. And that's why I started the conversation by saying that personal finances are personal. So basically, a budget is an evolving spending plan for your life. So as your life evolves, then your budget also should evolve. One thing I've seen many people do is that in January, they create a budget, and that's it. For the rest of the year, there are no changes to the budget. It's the same all play all to the end of the year. That is not how a budget should be. So for instance, there's an increment in March, or maybe there's even an increment in fuel prices, or there's an increment in, say, the food that you buy. You understand? Your budget should reflect that in a given month. So for example, let's say in January, you got your colleague to be driving you to work. So you're not paying for transportation cost. In February, maybe the colleague resigned, for instance, and you have to pay for transportation cost. That should be infused in your budget. So your January budget will definitely not be a February budget, for instance. How then do you draw a budget? For me, there are two categories. There are people who are salaried workers, and there are people who are not salaried workers. For salaried workers, it's much easier, and I'll come to that. I first want to focus on the entrepreneurs, the freelancers, and whatnot. For those people, we have something we call bare bones budgeting. What do I mean? You can look at your past 6 months' income. Let's say from July to say January. In July, you earn 500 cedis. In February, August, you earn 1,000 cedis. October, 1,005. Maybe December, you earn 700 cedis. You can use the 500 cedis, which is your worst income if you receive it the past 6 months, as your benchmark to budget. So instead of doing a budget with 1,005 because your income is maybe that's your best month or after the past 6 months, no. Use your worst case scenario such that if any new money comes into play, you'll be able to even be much more free. Imagine you budget 1,005 and that given month you only make 500 cedis. How do you then navigate? So it's important as a non-salaried worker or somebody who doesn't have a stable sort of income, you use the variable or say the worst case scenarios kind of way to budget your money. Now, the next thing is for the salaried workers. For them, what I say is that even for the non-salaried workers, you need to find a formula that best works for you. And I can't overemphasize the importance of personal finance being personal. So what do I mean? I can say that in my budgeting principle, I want to use the 50-30-20 approach. Again, what do I mean? 50% of my money should go into my fixed expenses, or the things that are essential to me, or the things I can't do without. For instance, I can't say I won't eat in a given month. I won't say that I won't pay my rent, for instance, or I won't pay for, say, maybe children's school fees, or I won't pay for, say, maybe it could be anything, maybe clothing for you, for instance. So you need to know what the essential items are, and that takes 50% of your income. Now, 30% of your income should then go to the variable expenses or the things that are not absolute essentials. Maybe the Friday night hangout you want to do. Maybe in a given month, you want to go out 4 times, but maybe February is a tough month for you, so you want to go out twice in a month. That's also there. Then 20% of your money should go to savings and investment. I want to distinguish between the two before I move on to what it entails. Now, when we talk about savings, it simply means money you've put aside for a future expense or for a future, consumption, for instance. So if I keep money under my bed, I have saved. If I keep money in the shoebox, I have saved. But we save to invest, and I'm sure we'll talk about investment as we go along the line. So the 50, 30, 20 is just to have a formula that works for me. For somebody, it could be 40, 40, 20. 40 to my fixed expenses, 40 to my variable, and 20 to my investment. The whole thing is to find a formula that works best for you. Even if it is 10% that you can do consistently for a savings and investment, you do that. The hack here is that if you are able to reduce your variable expenses or you're not absolute essentials, then you can have enough room to save, to invest. That's the hack. Now, assuming you've drawn a budget using a 50, 30, 20 principle, how then do you stick to it? Number one, please, and I've seen it many times, we set an overly tight budget. We don't leave a little bit of wiggle room. What do I mean? You've budgeted to the T that there's not even miscellaneous on your budget. How do you navigate that, for instance? So you've planned that every given month you spend 100 cedis on transportation to work. Every day is 10 cedis. Example purposes to maybe Uber. No, say that's Trusky, 10 cedis every day. You go to work one day and you range and have to pick an Uber home. Once you do that, automatically your budgeting is out of the way. So in drawing up a budget, you need to leave room for miscellaneous or emergencies, for instance. Number two, you need to budget for the little things. One of the things I've realized is that people don't budget for, say, airtime. People don't budget for, say, Apple subscription or Netflix subscription. People don't do that. But it takes money from your pocket. So budget for the little things as well. And for me, this is also very crucial. Please don't budget in your head. Write it down. Whether an Excel sheet, whether your notepad, whatever it is, please write it down. If you budget in your head, you come up to the first point I made that you wonder where the money went to. And number four, you need to find time to track your expenses. What do I mean? You budget to spend 1,000 cedis on food. Make sure that you are recording your expenses such that when you at a given month, you know, okay, in a month I've spent 1,000 cedis on food. Then I can make adjustments. Then I can make improvements. Without the tracking of expenses, your budgeting is a waste of time. You need to track expenses if you really want to make progress in your budget. So for me, that is what I would say. Number one, find a formula that works for you. Number two, you need to budget for the little things. Don't budget in your head. And also find joy in tracking your expenses. It's very difficult, but make budgeting a lifestyle for you, and I'm sure you'll be in a better place. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Desmond. My key takeaway from here is that by having a budget, you tell your money where to go instead of wondering where your money went. I like that a lot. But it also sounds a bit technical, for lack of a better word, maybe for somebody who has never done this before, they may be looking at this approach and saying, "Hey, I don't even know where to start." Sarah, in your experience, if I'm on this call and I'm hearing this and I want to make a plan, but I'm not even sure what to do, is there an avenue for someone like that?
Yes, there actually is. So this one has actually tried to make it very simple, making it flexible and personal, and then also finding your time to track and not tracking in your head. But if you're still sitting and you feel like, as for you, maybe your temperament or your personality does not allow you to do these things, that's why Petra is having this webinar. And we have a free advisory service with people who actually have tools. And I'm sure when it comes to budgeting, we can also recommend some apps to you, some very free apps to you. So we have tools and then also mechanisms that help us do this for people. So if you want to do this, you can reach out to us. We'll share our details and give us a call or a message, and then we will help you be able to do this practically and set you up to do this on your own. So maybe if for the first time you want to do this, try and just reach out to us if you can't do this on your own. And the great thing, like this one is saying, being able to manage your variable expenses. And if you had gone somewhere else, this is actually an expense you pay a consultant for. So this is free, so take advantage of it so that you can be able to benefit and do this with much little effort.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I also like the fact that that's a free thing that you're able to do. Before we move on, I'd like to mention that we have the question and answers chat box open. So we'll plead with participants to have their questions on there, so the panelists will be able to address them for us in time. Awesome. Okay, but moving on, Desmond, in your earlier submission, I noticed you mentioned something about a 50-30-20 rule or some other iterations of it. And you also mentioned that part of that goes into investments, right? And you would admit you may agree with me that in recent times, the investment climate has not been the easiest. However, we also know that the investment culture is not something you put off just because you are not sure of what to do or where to go. It's once you have the culture of investments, you should definitely always try to go out for it. So in your expert opinion, what are some of the things that individuals should consider this year when it comes to looking out for investments?
It's a good question. And I'll start by saying that I mentioned that the 50-30-20 is not cast in stone. So the 20% is savings and investment. And a couple of months ago, if you spoke to someone about investment, the person will be like, hey, don't even go there. I'll probably start smacking you or something like that. But I think it's important that we realize that investment is still an integral part of, and I'm sure maybe Sarah will add on to it, but I think investment is still an integral part of our everyday life or as a people. Again, I was doing a presentation. Somebody was like, if this investment is even important at all? It is really important. Now, here's why. You see, like Sarah mentioned, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. I'm not saying that with an investment, you probably never fail or anything, but you are probably in a better position if you invest rather than not investing at all. Now, think of it this way. If you do, say, whatever money you make, you spend it. Assuming there's a rainy day, and someone will tell me that every day is a rainy day, but assuming it's a proper rainy day, how do you ensure that you are in a better position? Now, in my experience, during rainy days, it's better to have only the emotional stress than having a combination of emotional stress and financial stress. So for me, the fundamental thing is that you want to be able to have something in case there's a rainy day, you're in a much better position. Number two, inflation is still there. In fact, as at 2021 November, if you bought something for 100 cedis, as at 2022, inflation was 54%. 2023, it was 23% or 26%. So what it means is that if you bought something for 100 cedis in November 2021, as at December 2023, you need 190 cedis to buy the same thing. That's more like a 90%, like 90% you got 90 cedis increment. Meanwhile, you and I, our salaries have not increased 90% over that 2-year period. So you need an investment to at least buffer you. And one of the things I've realized is that when you speak about investment, everybody's idea goes to the financial assets. Investment is not just financial assets. We have non-financial assets. Somebody will say, I want to buy a land, in that in the next 2-3 years, the value would appreciate. That is also there. So, and maybe I'll leave that to Sarah to talk about the specific examples. But investment is not even just financial assets. You yourself, it could be an investment you want to put money into, maybe by going to further education, whatever it may be. So that is there. Number two, or number three, you need to know that whether I like it or not, there's risk involved with everything. If you want to go into any form of investment, even you choosing not to invest, it's risk. If you choose to drink water, there's risk involved. If you choose to get up, drive to work, there's risk involved. So it's the same for investment. You need to realize that there's risk involved with every form of investment. And therefore, you need to understand your risk tolerance. Are you willing and able to then tolerate that kind of risk? If, for example, you're not willing to lose 5 cedis, and I'm going to give you an example, but I'll leave probably that to Sarah. But you need to be willing and able to tolerate that risk even before you jump into that investment. And finally, for me, you need to conduct proper due diligence, because if it's probably too good to be true, it's probably not true. So maybe I'll end it here. If Sarah adds up, then probably I'll be coming back in again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Desmond. I think you said everything. I myself, I'm also learning a lot because this is also a refresher for most of the things that we know. And I think that just to stress on the part about risk tolerance and people understanding that risk will never go away. And we know that a lot of things happen within the DDEP period. But imagine if you had decided not to invest at all and taken out your money from any investment scheme, or especially pension schemes, which is the reason why most of us joined onto this webinar because of Petra. There was some form of respite that came to pension funds and plus 50% markup. So people's funds increased over time from the DDEP, and then there was a lot of protection in terms of the assets themselves that were there. Maybe the only volatilities you saw would be when it comes to dollar-denominated assets that we could invest in. But despite the fact that all that happened, we know that the dollar is a good store of value over a long period of time. So your horizon when you're making investments, as Desmond has mentioned, should not always just be short-term. You should really look at the long-term reasons why you are investing. And then also the investments are not just, let's say, financially, as in investing your hard-earned salaries. If you're a tier 3 customer, when it comes to pensions, Petra has different resources available that allow you to even own real estate. So using your tier 3 contributions as a collateral to own a home or to build one or to buy one totally. So there are other things that also help. Imagine you had cashed out your tier 3 and paid the taxes because you felt that the economy will not bounce back. We know that it's slow days yet, but then there are still some other benefits to contributing and still keeping up the culture of making investments, even in a tumultuous time, as we saw in Ghana last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah.
If I may add up again.
Yes, please do.
Yes, and I'm happy that Sarah added that bit. And one of the things that I've also realized is that whenever you're looking at investment, especially in these times, it's important you come back to the goals that Sarah mentioned, the SMART goals that you have for yourself. Your investment should align with that SMART goals you set for yourself. What do I mean? Let me give you a simple example. You want to have 10,000 cedis in your, let's say, an account to pay school fees in the next 3 months or 6 months. And you hear Desmond talk about, say, shares, for instance. Shares may not be the ideal thing to help you achieve the SMART goal you set for yourself. So whatever investment you want to put your money into, make sure it aligns with the specific or the SMART goals you set for yourself. Number 2, you need to also know that you need to diversify your investments. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. And like Sarah mentioned, there's a pension, there's, let's say, a real asset like a house. Put your eggs in different baskets, so that if DDP happens, you are not overly exposed. So that's one thing I want to also add up. Then finally, always monitor and rebalance. Maybe your goals have changed, so maybe the kind of investment you're doing should also change. So always be monitoring and rebalance as and when you want to add up. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Desmond. Sarah, so if I'm on this call, I'm hoping that I can still call your financial advisors for further insights and then even recommend others to call. I hope that's still the case.
Yes, definitely. I wanted to just chip in a bit and find something that Desmond on the points that he asked in speaking to an advisor as well. As an individual, you also need to keep abreast with the economic news and other information within the industry. I know that when we hear GDP and inflation and all those other things, yes, the advisors would help you understand those concepts. But as an individual, don't turn off your television or change the channel to Kunkumbaja or something when you see the business news coming on. Listen. Like as part of self-improvement, also do some research and understand these things. So when they're saying that inflation is now at is 4 basis points above, you understand what it means, and then you can get the implications, so that you don't get it's wrong when someone tells you now the dollar is used to be 1 CD to 1, and now the dollar is 4, so it means it's so good. Do you get it? So also be interested in those kind of things as part of a personal endeavor to improve yourself this year.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that very insightful response with regards to investment. But I want us to circle back on something real quick. So from the beginning, right, Desmond, you mentioned that there was a need to take the snapshots, right? However, I feel the discussion so far has been geared towards probably somebody who took the snapshots and decided that, oh, I have a lot of money coming my way, or I have some money in my way that I would want to invest towards. However, there may be somebody who has also done the snapshot and look and realized that, wow, I have an incredible amount of debt. I owe quite a few people. I may have some liabilities on my personal books, right? What I would want you to tackle for me this morning is how do we handle individual debts? And then also, how do we reduce it? Is it even necessary to eradicate debt from our personal lives totally? And if you can share your insights on that. Thank you.
Thank you. On your last point, right, depending on the kind of books you read or who you listen to, you probably have a different perspective. I know Dave Ramsey hates debt. On the other hand, Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, he absolutely loves debt. For me, I feel like I'm in between the two of them, where I know there can be a two-edged sword, where it can be a force for good. At the same time, if you're not careful, it can really cut you like really, really, really deep. So I think that's where probably I'll start from, that you need to understand the kind of debt you are going for. For me, if you ask me that a debt like mortgage, is it a good debt? Absolutely. Now, here's why. In Ghana, in current times, property price about $1 million plus Ghana cedis, $120,000, $150,000. For the average consumer, for the average person, these are far-fetched figures that you can't attain. But if, for example, you work in an institution that is able to give you maybe a mortgage facility, and I think she alluded to the Petra, you're able to use your tier 3 to do that, for instance, it's something that I think is a good debt to have, like a mortgage. It's absolutely superb. On the other hand, in Ghana, I've seen people who have gone to take loans to fund their wedding, for instance. Please don't come and beat me in my house, I beg you. But I think that some of those things where you are funding some of the wants with your debt, it becomes problematic. Maybe for them, the wedding is their need. Again, personal finance is personal, but this is just my personal opinion, so don't beat me on that. And so it's important to realize where you fall in that spectrum. Now, as you have so much debt that you want to clear, there are two approaches. And again, personal finance is personal. The first approach is where you tackle the ones with the higher interest first, which we call the debt avalanche method. So you look at, okay, I have 3 loans. One is 20%, one is 10%, one is 5%. I want to start tackling the one with 20% first. Then I come to the 10% one and 5%. And we have another method we call the snowball method, where you look at the smallest one interest first, so maybe 5%, then I look for the 10%, I look for the 20% one. Each of them has their own specific advantages. But like I said again, personal finance are personal. For somebody, they see the light in seeing that, okay, I've cleared one debt, so I'm moving to the next one. For somebody, they don't tackle they don't take the bull by the horn and tackle the big ones first. So everybody's approach may be different. Find the one that best works for you. Now, maybe you have debt, and there's some assets that you really don't need. Can you sell some of those assets to defray some of the debt? It's a way that you can use to reduce the debt. Now, another debt that comes to mind is credit card debt, where maybe some people are joining us from wherever they may be, outside the country or even in Ghana, where you have some access to credit card. If you're taking credit card, make sure you are paying within a stipulated time. Because I know for most of the banks, when you default, the interest rate you pay on it is absolutely on the high up in the roof. So be mindful of the kind of debt you are taking. And even in these times where a Ghana reference rate around 32%, it means that worst case scenario, if you're borrowing at 32%, even for your business, that's a bad deal. Again, in my opinion. So it's important you realize the specific circumstance you are in before you go into the debt. For me, debt can be good, debt can be really bad. Even on a mortgage, I said it's a good debt. If you're earning in cedis, don't go for a dollar mortgage because you'll probably be bitten by both the cedi depreciation and the interest rate that you pay on it. So you need to understand your circumstance, like you've already mentioned, then know the kind of debt you should go for. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very insightful response. And we'd like to thank the entire panel for the insights you have shared with us so far. For the participants, please don't forget to put the questions in the chat box. We are still taking questions so that we would have the panelists address them. However, we would like to tackle one last major question before we proceed. So far, we've spoken on planning, we've spoken on budgeting, savings, investment, and even debt, just as we have done now. But there's a major integral part of our financial life cycle that often gets relegated to the background, most often because we think it's far off. It's not something that is coming up in the near future, and that's our retirement. So, Sarah, if you could share some insight in your experience. Is retirement planning a big deal? And should it even form part of our day-to-day planning? And also, what role does it play in allowing us to achieve long-term financial success?
Thank you very much, Magdan. It is more than important. It's a very necessary part, and so necessary that in governments you find that there are structural and mandatory contributions that are made towards that. Unless you were, and I wouldn't say lucky because not necessarily lucky, some people actually really plan very well. And so unless you were very diligent and you created some wealth very early for yourself before retiring, so you're a billionaire or sorts of that, or sorts, and you can still be getting your salary and more during retirement, you're good. But for a lot of people, what we see is that by the time we are retiring, we don't have as much strength. And even the way retirement is, it also has its own mindset and things. So you don't just need to plan financially, you need to also plan health-wise. And it all starts today. In our industry, we see a lot of people towards retirement coming and then very sad because they worked in different places or they look at the contributions they are going to get and they are disheartened. Some of them are even so annoyed. They say, why did their employers allow them to redeem all their tier 3 while they were working and leave them with nothing and decide to go back and quote unquote curse the employers with eggs and things. We've seen those things a couple of times. So this is the reality of it. And in Ghana, we could even take a poll. How many of us have checked our SNIT statements or our tier 2 statements? We don't quite bother about those things because we think it's far off. And retirement in Ghana is 60. So that means that if you are past your 20s, you have less than 30 years to retire. And that will come very quickly. So why is this necessary? There are structures, as I mentioned, already in place to help you do this. And your employer already contributes 13.5% of your salary towards your retirement. And you as an employee contributes 5% to the tier 2 scheme. For those two, they are mandatory and cannot be touched. And sometimes we look at our statements and say that, hey, this money, if we could have taken it, but it's good, they cannot be touched. So those are just your tier 1, which goes to SNIT, and then your tier 2 that comes to a corporate trustee. In case you're using Petra, then the tier 2 comes to us. So upon retirement, you are paid a lump sum from the tier 2, and then you're paid a monthly pension from the tier 1. Now, the 5% is very small. It's even smaller if you are Christian, smaller than your tithe. So what then happens to that? Although it's invested and it earns interest for you over a period. You are at liberty to also do a tier 3. The law allows you to do a maximum of 16.5% of your basic salary. So that means that amount can be saved before you pay taxes. So if today, and another expense we also don't think about, as Desmond was speaking, in terms of planning for the little things, is like your bank charges and your mobile charges and things are equally also expenses. And then also your taxes are a form of expenses. So if you earn, say, 1,000 cedis and you want to do a tier 3, or you're not doing a tier, you don't do a tier 3 of 10%, what happens is that 10%, which is 100 cedis, does not go through the payee tax system to be charged. And so that money is saved for you rather than it being deducted and paid as taxes. So that's more or less like an expense to you. But if you're not doing it at all, you're actually paying that money into taxes straight up. You're actually paying taxes on that amount and you can't do anything. It's gone. Like, it's just gone. There's nothing you can do. So if you're in a company where you're not doing that, or you're not doing a tier 3 a personal pension, the law allows you to do as much as 16.5% into a personal pension or a tier 3 scheme towards your retirement. So that is free money you can take advantage of. The next thing is that if you're with an employer and you're already contributing tier 3, what we see is that most employees just decide to match. And so employer is doing 5%, I'm also just going to do 5%. It's great. You have a 10% advantage, but understand that you can do a maximum of an extra 6.5% if you so wish to and your budget allows you in a tier 3. What we see is that because these schemes are what we call defined contribution schemes, it is what you put in that is invested for you immediately, unlike what you have with SNITs, where your contributions are, your benefits are going to be paid to you based on a formula. This is strictly investment. And so you see people who leave these things to grow for the time that they have it invested, come back and they're smiling towards retirement. So if your employer is already doing something like that for you, be patient. You're already getting a free 5%. And don't always be in a hurry to be withdrawing that amount because you would need it. And we know that there's a 10-year rule towards it. But that doesn't mean that once you hit your 10th year, you should cash in on that amount. Unless you have a very pressing need or you speak to the advisors and you have some plans for that, it's always advisable to leave it because that also serves as some sort of retirement income. So when do you start? It's actually now. I always say, and then from experience and learning, that these monies are just not taken and then invested. They are compounded. And that's why we call compounding one of the, like the ninth wonder in the world. So the power of compounding also helps put you ahead when you make these investments and you leave them as it is. So yes, you can do as much as 16.5% of your basic salary. That means that 16.5, you don't pay tax. So that reduces your tax burden overall. And that serves as additional income. Another thing we see about investments is also making your money work for you. So you can put your money to work for you rather than having to pay directly into taxes. So yes, it's starting now. You may be 40, you may be 50. Like this one has said, and Magdalene has also reiterated, when you start early, you are able to get something compared to when you decide not to do anything at all and wait. Inflation will still eat on that 16.5% anyways, and you'll be paying taxes on it. So please take the decision to do that. And as we have already showed you, there are advisors to help you make those decisions for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. So if you're on this call, right after the call ends, we'll definitely want you to reach out to your people, find out what how your SNIS is performing, how your tier 2 is performing, and even also reach out to our financial advisors for the personal pension options as well. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. So please keep the questions coming, and we'll proceed to the final question for our session today. All right. So Desmond and Sarah, we've had quite an engaging discussion. We've shared a number of tools, a variety of ways to go about to master our personal finances for the year ahead. However, we are only in January, and we've seen in past years that there may be periods or there are times that there are things that come up that are out of our control. It may be an increase in some tax. It may be some increase in expenditure, and sometimes it may be a personal loss of one or two streams of income for a person. So if I take all of these, I have my budget, I have the goals, but however, along the way, I have a setback. How do I stay resilient and adapt my financial strategy to respond to any of these changes that can be it economic or personal?
Should I go first or Sarah should come in?
That's when you may proceed.
Okay. So now just know that no matter how much you plan, things do come up. And that's a given. Once you appreciate that, I think that's a better way than saying that maybe I won't plan at all. That's a given. Now, Sarah mentioned something, and I used to do the same. When it was time for business news, I'll change the channel to another channel. I was not even, I didn't even bother about business news. I mean, that was like way back, like growing up. I think that has to change. We need to be very curious about the macro economy. We don't always leave the things to the finance professionals to do. Be curious about it. If you're listening to the radio and you're talking about GDP, they're talking about MPC, they're talking about, you need to just probably even jot it down. Then ask the finance professional, I heard something about MPC rates being kept there or MPC rates being reduced. What does it mean for me? You understand? Because all of these things would affect your personal finances. Because if MPC rates drops, for instance, all things being equal, we should start probably seeing borrowing rates come down, or because the GRR feeds into the, or the MPC feeds into the GRR, for instance. So all of these things affect you. So we really have to be curious about the economy. You really have to be curious about finding information, do your own research. Then you can ask finance professionals about their views about it. Now, it's always an easier conversation when you come to me and you have done some bit of reading and you ask me an informed question. Then I can, based on what you've read, be able to advise you that, okay, ABCD means ABCD. But if you come to me and say that, Desmond, tell me about this, without having any form of background, it becomes difficult. Where do I even start from? So you yourself have to have a mandate of saying that I need to be curious about the macroeconomy. Number two, when it comes to personal finances, and I think for me this is the most crucial point, there are basically two things you can do to improve your situation or become resilient. Number one is either you are reducing your expenses, or number two, you are increasing your income. All the budgeting, everything what is done, controlling your debt is meant to reduce your expenses. More crucially, is to find a way to increase your income. Now think about it. For how long, and those on the call will know what I will say, how long can you do 001 or 101 or 0000? You can't do this forever, right? But if you have multiple sources of income, I think that's a much cushions you for the long term. And for us salaried workers, we should ensure that our salary is not equal to our income. At least let your salary be one form of income to you. If not anything at all, add investments to it such that there's some sort of buffer for you. If you can have other sources of income, that's even be much more brilliant, like the side hustle and whatever it is. But ultimately, you need to find ways of creating value for people such that they will pay you extra beyond your 9 to 5. And I think for me, that is the only way you can stay resilient throughout the whole year. Managing your expenses and finding ways to increase your income. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Okay, Sarah, please proceed.
Okay, my 2 cents to that, and I think Desmond has really expatiated on everything that you need to do in terms of either increasing your income or reducing expenditure. But my 2 cents to that is for every measure that you decide to take this year, despite the fact that you would have emergencies coming in, you should always be consistent. And consistency can look like this month, as we mentioned earlier, your budget has to be an evolving budget. So it's not that I have set my 1,000 CDs and it's going to be 1,000 CDs entirely. You need to be consistent with what you're doing. So in a month where your emergency fund has not really been created to be able to cater for everything, and you have a very big emergency, instead of saying I'm not going to save at all, even if you saved 100 CDs, it's still part of it. It's better than waiting to the last quarter and saying that, hey, then this one day I'm going to save my entire salary for the next 3 months so I can meet my goal. Be consistent with what you're doing, because consistency always trumps intensity. And yes, the issues are going to come up in terms of the drawbacks, but you have made up your mind and you've decided that you're going on a path towards becoming a lot more financially prudent and independent in this year. So I'll say that for whatever you do, ensure that there is consistency. Something is done every single month so that you can reach your final goals and be able to still be happy. And who never knows, mostly we look at it from the negative side, but good things can also come in terms of you getting a promotion or you being able to hit some other side hustles that give you a lot of money. It doesn't mean that because you planned with 1,000, now that everything has gone up, we're still going to go with 1,000. Make adjustments as you go along, but just be consistent all in all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, Desmond, for sharing your insights and sharing your experience with us. We've had an amazing discussion so far. At this juncture, we have a few questions for participants on the call, so we'll just run through them quickly. And once I pose a question, any of you can tackle it. The first question has to do with Momo charges. Someone would want to know, are Momo charges also to be budgeted for as part of small expenses?
I think you have to track them, right? So, for example, you've spent 100 CDs in a given day. You don't just record 100 CDs on the food. you need to add the Momo charges as a separate line on your budget in terms of tracking it. Then you know that, okay, in a given month, out of the 1,000 cedis income, maybe 50 cedis is going to Momo charges alone. Then it means that I have to take more cash along so that I don't have to pay with Momo charges. So it's by tracking it, then you can know where to improve. I'm not too sure how you can budget for Momo expenses, but it's important to track it, because all things being equal, if you can avoid those charges, they're better for you. But if you can't, it's better to track it so that you can make an adjustment as you go along the way. Thanks.
All right, thank you. JT Doku would also want to know, please, is there a way I can separate savings from petrol aside the tier 2, and can the money be deducted from source monthly?
Yes. So that's very simple. So you already have tier 2, which is more or less autopilot going out of your contributions every month. What you can do is that we mentioned, you can take up a personal pension. So if you don't have a tier 3 at all, the law allows you to do 16.5% maximum. So you can talk to us, and then we can set you up and ensure that is deducted with the consent of your employer, is deducted for you. Alternatively, if you don't take advantage of the tax savings, or you already are doing the tax savings in some form and you want to do something personally on your own, you can open a savings booster account that allows you to pay from your net salary. For that, we assume the taxes have already been deducted. So, and you can do that from your bank account once your salary is paid, so that it more or less sweeps easily into the savings account. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And JT, I hope that answers your question. Enoch has a rather simple question. What level of risk should be tolerable?
So you see, personal finances is personal, right? On a risk scale, we have people who are risk averse, people are risk neutral, people are risk tolerant, and you have aggressive risk takers. What can help you know this is you can even just check online. Or speak to an advisor. They can send you a questionnaire to be able to determine your risk tolerance level. Now take it as this way: if I give you two options to flip a coin, and maybe say if you don't flip it, you're guaranteed 10,000 cedis. But if you flip it, you can take say 50,000 cedis, and you want to flip it. For somebody, they wouldn't want to flip it because they would not want any form of risk. So you need to know where you fall within that risk scale, whether you're a low-risk investor or a high-risk investor. In terms of the securities you want to buy, in terms of risk, the best thing I can say is that you always use the treasury rate as a benchmark. Now, if you go into an investment and they say that, oh, I'll give you 10% per month, that is 120% per year. That is more than 3 times the T-bill or 4 times the T-bill rate, for instance. So it should tell you the kind of risk involved. Now, in finance, we say that the higher the risk, the higher the expected return. So if somebody is giving you plenty returns, it probably means that, oh, I've seen something on my screen. Yes. I mean, the screen is saying that, well done, Desmond.
You're doing great.
Yes. So it probably means that the risk on that particular investment is high. And that's why the person is willing to compensate you with that high return. So that can be a sort of benchmark you can use to be able to know what kind of risk I'm willing to take. But ultimately, risk tolerance is very, very, very personal.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Desmond. And Nee has a rather interesting question for us today. He says, given the current economic trends, would it be advisable to put aside a budget for betting as a type of investment? Yes. Desmond, would you like to take this one?
I think Desmond is best take this, but I want to say that I am not very good with betting, so I don't understand the whole concept. So Desmond can take this question.
So when you started the question, I was like, no. Someone should not please ask about betting. Because I've written about it before that even though betting has maybe some similarity to say buying equity or whatever it is, betting is not an investment, right? It's just a game of chance, right? And so for me, number one, all things being equal, I don't recommend people to bet, because what I've seen from my experience is two things. People's chances of success is usually way, way lower than they think it is. So all things being equal, you are more likely to lose the money than to gain the money. Number two, I've seen people actually borrow to bet. And if that's your circumstance, even for you, it's even a double wahala. So please, if that's your circumstance, no. Now, betting, if you can't stop, it's an addiction for you, or probably can't stop. It's better to set maybe an amount you can afford to lose. Maybe, for instance, you can afford to lose only 50 cedis of your money. Put that in your budget. And maybe bet small, 5 cedis for the whole month, then you are fine. But I wouldn't recommend that you put a lot of your money into betting, because it can really, really take you down a really bad path. So in all things being equal, if you can avoid it, avoid it. If you can't, only set an amount that you can be willing to lose. Because all things being equal, you're likely to lose than. How many people have become millionaires from betting? Just think about it.
Thank you very much, Desmond, for that, and Ni, thank you as well for an interesting question. Please, we have uploaded a link that would give you access to our financial advisors in the chat box. So kindly click on the link that has been shared in the chat box, and a financial advisor will reach out to you. Ni, I encourage you to do that now. Okay, we'll move on to our questions, and we have Clement Otibodako. He says, good morning, team. Thanks for an incredible insight. And please, my question is, how long do I continue to track my expenses?
Sarah, please start. Or I like talking, so I can start, but it's up to you if you want to start first.
So I would have said that, so maybe before you come now, I would have said that you are doing this for the long haul. Maybe you're trying to also get to understand your behavior patterns. So how long do you track it? It takes some time for us to be masters at what we're doing. And then afterwards, you make adjustments. I think that you should do this as often as possible. I would have said monthly, because on a daily basis, you always spend. And so either your question is you want to be able to understand the pattern you're using so that you know that, okay, then this is how I regularly spend. And so then I go on autopilot. For that, I'd say that you can look at your expenses for a 3-month period or for a 6-month period if there are variations there. But I think that this exercise is an exercise you'll be doing all the time. And so it will definitely change as your income changes. It will definitely, but you get into a certain habit. And that's what we are trying to create, the habit of knowing, so that ultimately, when you're now going out to do your betting or your Friday night chilling and things, you understand that it affects my budget this way, so I won't do it. And then it gives you that edge to say that, okay, then I need to be able to increase my income rather, so that I can be able to afford some of these things. So I think that budgeting is going to be a lifelong thing that you're going to do. Maybe when you're trying in the beginning to learn what your expenses are, you can do it over a 3-month period. It's quite revealing. Maybe 1 month, you might consciously know that you're trying to do something. So, but do it over a 3-month period to learn what your behaviors are. You could be a spender or a saver, either of that. But the budgeting process will not stop. You keep doing that forever. But what you learn is you understand how you spend and you get into the habit. So consciously and unconsciously, before you spend something, you know, does it go into my budget or not? You understand that. So I think so Desmond can also share if there's something extra he wants to add.
There's absolutely nothing to add. You've killed the point. So I think wonderful. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sarah, too.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Randy Entry has a question for us, and he says, I try to budget every month, but how do you stick to your budget without looking bad in the eyes of family, friends, etc.? This month, I lost 1,500 to family funeral contributions not planned for.
So you see, when it comes to budgeting, right, and dealing with family, it's tricky. We have a concept we call black tax. In another conversation, we can handle that. But I think it's important that you realize that the sticking to the budget bit is where the hard work is. We are not saying that in a given month or in a given time, there are not times you default. Trust me, I also default sometimes in my budgeting. And we've already alluded to the fact that things do happen, but your times where you are sticking to it over the long haul should be better than the time that you don't stick to it. when it comes to maybe a given month, maybe like you said, funeral has come, for example, you didn't plan for it. I mean, you could have planned for it if you had taken an insurance so that when it comes to that, you don't have to dip into your finances by taking a funeral policy, for instance. But worst case scenario, you didn't plan for it, so it has come. And you can't say that let the body be in the mortuary for forever, because it will mean more expenses for you. So maybe that given month, you probably would default from your budget. But in the next month, you need to strategize on how best you can recover. And so for me, you learn from your mistakes, you make the mistakes, you learn from it, and you know how you can improve going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Desmond. As mentioned earlier, the link is still in the chat box. For the participants here, you can click on it so you have a financial advisor reach out to you. If you know somebody else who's also on this call, please copy the link, share it with them so they can also reach out and get the sort of insight that we are all benefiting from here today. For our next question, the person would want to know, I invested with a renowned investment firm and got my funds locked up till date. How do I know the right investment firm to invest with?
Okay, so I'm going to pick a bit on what this one said earlier, and maybe he'll come in to finish the point. But one of the things you really need to look out for, aside what your goals are, is in Ghana, mostly when we hear investments, we always go, okay, what are the returns? What am I getting? And like he said, you might want to be doing something that's giving you 5% every month. So 5% every month is more or less like 60% a year. You should be concerned, especially when the investments, what we term low risk, or the most low risk investments in this. I won't say risk free because that's a term you can't use today in Ghana easily. But a low risk investment like treasury bills is giving you like half that value. You should always match what your interests are to really the return. Then just not say that. Because the flip side of whatever we don't say, what we learn in business school and finance is they had a risk and had a return. You're being compensated for something that you don't see, which is the risk. So don't only focus on the returns, also look at the risk aspect. Again, look at track record. Some institutions come up and they don't have much track record, or they haven't garnered a lot of years in the industry. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean that institutions that are already in the system will not face a challenge. When it came to the DDEP, a lot of well-renowned investment firms went through it, but because they had been around for a while and had learned it, it wasn't their fault. It was purely a national or a government or more or less like an investment issue that was across. So it was industry-wide. It wasn't just the financial institutions, but with the track record and with the experience they have had in these things, they have been able to bounce back, and they're still giving customers some reasonable returns while looking at safety. So one, don't only be focused on the return. You hear 60% per annum, and then you say, oh, but T-Bill is even giving only 30, and this is giving 60, so that is great. Don't just look at that. Be conservative with what you're looking at, unless you are the type of person that is very, very high risk, and also be able to look at the track record of the organization and interact a bit with people. Sometimes if it is too good to be true, then it isn't true. So be careful about that as well. So those are two things you can look at. And then the type of regulation that surrounds that institution. Some institutions, I'm sure the Bank of Ghana did this a lot sometime, which is also what is required by the Banking Act and other things, that they need to alert the public about what is going on and telling you that this particular institution XYZ is risky in terms of what they are doing, and so be cautious. So that is words of caution. Look at the type of regulation that surrounds that industry, and then what the regulator is also doing around that. And finally, if it's always too good to be true, it really isn't. It's probably a Ponzi scheme or some cash where you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So that's something I want to add.
Thank you very much, Sarah. If it's too good to be true, it's probably not. All right, thank you. So we have another question. Sarah mentioned mortgage as an investment, but mortgage in this country is always denominated in dollars, which is negatively volatile. So how do I fix this?
Great question. I like that. And again, referencing to what Desmond said, if you're in Ghana, don't go and take a loan in dollars when you earn in cedis. He emphasized that, and that's a very strong point. With Petra, the mortgages or the home ownership scheme that we have is denominated in Ghana cedis. And so we understand that your salary is not like the 10% of the 1% of the 10% that are probably earning in dollars or indexed. Even if they're earning in dollars, the salaries are indexed to the dollar and they are paid in cedi. So we have taken that concern into consideration, and we are working with a number of partners where you receive cedi-denominated loans or cedi-denominated mortgage loans over a period. Our periods are very good, as ranging as high as 20 years, and then in some cases 25 years. And the good thing is that we are collateralizing on your tier 3. And so if you're a tier 3 customer, rather than withdrawing that money and going to buy a whole house on its own and having to pay tax and all that, we are bringing the process to your doorstep. We're saying that speak to us. We'll have our home advisors also sit with you and look at your current streams of income and then how to raise it. The rates are very, very competitive compared to if you are directly gone to our various providers that we are working with for the homes yourself. And then we have a range of providers as well, a catalog of homes that have already been completed at various locations to suit your budget. If you're already not ready, and after we have sat to realize that you can't own a home, maybe now we can put together a plan for you that allows you to own it in the shortest possible time. And so everything we are saying today about budget and making financial decisions is very critical if you're somebody who wants to stop renting and have the peace of mind in having your own home, which is equally an investment. Another thing too is that these mortgage loans also offer you some form of tax reliefs. So when you have a mortgage, there's some tax reliefs that come on your salary that you can have your accounts people put that in. So this is how to do it. One, they are denominated in cedis. Unless otherwise you want something else, then we can go a bit higher than that. But we have taken those into consideration. They're denominated in cedis. There are a lot of providers that you can choose from. And then there are very good locations as well. And we sit with you throughout the whole process just to ensure that at the end, you make the best decision for yourself and for your family. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that, Nora. And once again, we want to encourage everyone on the call to just go to the chat box and take a look at the link in there. You should be able to access the link, fill the form, and we will have a financial advisor reach out to you. We have one more question, and the person would want to know, please, can you touch a bit on how we can benefit from the tax reliefs under the law and how to access them?
Very simple. You benefit by actually deciding to take a decision to go the route of that particular tax relief. How do I put it? The tax relief item. So what the government does is that and when it comes to tax laws, if you do so there are full taxes, there's clothing allowance, all those things. So when you are in the sector that qualifies for something like that, then you are able to benefit from the tax relief, especially for tier 3. If you are a tier 3 contributor, that cuts across, because maybe in your organization, you don't do dress code. So you may not benefit from clothing allowance or rent allowance and all those other things. But this particular one is for everybody. So if you've not taken advantage of a tier 3, it means that you are naturally paying some part of your salary into taxes. That's just the gospel truth about it. But if you decide to take up a tier 3, which gives you between 1%, 16.5% contribution of your basic salary. Naturally, that means that, let's say if you earn 1,000 cedis and you decide to do the full 16.5, what happens is that 165 Ghana cedis of your basic salary is taken out of your basic salary before your remaining, so let's say when you take out 100, and my math is not good here, but when you take out 190 and 165 from 1,000, let's say you are left with 800 Ghana cedis after tier 2 and everything goes out. So it's only 800 Ghana cedis that is sent for taxes, as opposed to if you had not done the tier 3 at all, then that means that the full 1,000, or even just taking 5%, 950 cedis is passed through the payee tax system. And so what happens is that you are benefiting from that tax relief because that money, instead of having to pay it and then pay tax brackets are as much as more than 25%, 35%, depending on where you are. Instead of paying that, you save that money. So yes, let's say your salary you get every time is 2,000 net after everything happens. Maybe now with that 165 taken out and not going through the tax system to then be added, maybe you might not still get the 2,000, but you probably get 1,000 and something. What that means is that extra and 100 C's that you don't see has already been saved somewhere for you. And so you have benefited from that by not directly getting the money and then paying taxes on it, so that instead of getting your 2,000, you get that going into. I don't know if that analogy helps you. But what happens is that you've been able to save some money you would have paid as taxes towards your personal investment, which is a Tier 3 or a savings boost or a personal pension.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much for that, Sarah. We want to take two more questions before we wrap up. And the first one would be, is Treasury bill a sensible investment option currently? That's what I presume you would want to take this.
Where do I start from? I think no investment in itself is sensible or not, right? It just depends on, like we've mentioned, the goals and your risk tolerance. You just need to appreciate that maybe in the current circumstance, the risk with T-bills is a bit elevated than usual. So are you willing and able to take that risk? If you are, absolutely. And we've spoken about diversification, not putting your eggs in one basket. So instead of just putting everything in T-bills, you probably want to spread across different asset classes. And I think that would be my recommendation. Know that the risk with any investment in this particular climate is elevated. Then you need to know that, am I willing to take that risk? If you are, please, absolutely, you can go ahead. But please diversify and also speak to an investment professional in addition. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Also speak to an investment professional in addition. And in that regard, the link has been posted in the Q&A chat box. So please fill the form and then have an investment professional reach out to you as soon as possible. All right. So for our final question, Sarah, someone would want to know, I am currently outside the country, but I have my Tier 2 account with Petra, but would still want to save with Petra. How do I go about that?
Okay, so for your Tier 2, you can access that when you retire. I don't know how many years you have towards retirement, but since you want to make contributions to us, we have various types. So there are things that you can do self-service. So we have our Achieve app as well that allows you to have full ownership of your investments and then make your contributions and withdrawals at will without having to interact physically with anyone. And alternatively too, you can do the savings booster. You can reach out to our advisors as well, and then this can be done for you. And the great thing is that not just making payments directly from your bank account, you can use your Visa or your MasterCards as well to schedule payments or actually make monthly contributions to. So you can just decide that, okay, as an individual probably outside the country, let me just leave a lump sum and then I'll come to it and then maybe I'll make additions as and when I work. And most people outside the country are paid on a weekly basis, so it helps you to also do weekly contributions into that. So you could either do that or decide to take advantage of any of our investment tools like the Achieve app that requires minimal human effort or human interaction with us, where you set it up. They are all very safe. And so speak to us and then we can put together something that works best for you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, Desmond. We are very grateful for your time, for sharing your insights, your experience, and then giving us the tools and the necessary experience that we would need to be able to master our personal finances in the year ahead. We are very grateful for your time and thank you for joining us. For the participants, we would want to encourage you to take the learnings we have here, put them into practice, if you're on the call, please do not leave without filling the form and having a financial advisor reach out to you. So we are always kept in the loop, and you always have a helping hand to be able to achieve the goals that we've all set for ourselves today. And don't just stop with yourself. Encourage your family and friends by sharing the link with them so that they're also able to benefit from the wealth of experience today. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to all participants, and let's all have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.